Welcome to Dying to Know, where we open up about everything that comes with losing a loved one.
Because the only thing that's worse than death is not being able to talk about it.
We're your bereavement babes, Leah and Rachel, and today we're talking children and grief. So how to explain death to children, or just grief in general. When we came up with this, were you thinking specifically like a child experiencing death, or like any kind of grief?
I think the reason I brought this up is just from from social media. I followed an account that was really specializing in it, and I feel like as my niece is getting older, she knows who her pop-up is even though she was only 6 months old when he was lost. So I feel I guess kids are just a little bit more present in my life, but so is death. And I feel like the combination of it both, I feel like, has kind of gotten a little bit more present. So I felt like it was a nice topic. Not a nice topic, but it's good, a good topic to kind of dive into a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So I went ahead to look up how to tell children about grief. More specifically, if someone passes. And this was off of a website called christianworks.org. I hope that's not a turnoff to anybody. But it had about 12 steps, but I just picked 3 that I thought were great. So one of them was be there to break the news or explain what happened to the child if possible. Give the children assurance and a feeling that they are still safe and cared for. And then the other one was to be calm and set the emotional tone of the conversation. So when reading these, especially the one about being calm and set the tone, it's if you're high emotions or if you feel you've lost control, then it's probably not best to talk to a child, because they're going to match the energy or now be maybe a little bit more afraid than what they were. And then also to be the one to break the news to them, because obviously they want a familiar place or face to tell them something instead of them hearing it from someone else. And then you kind of have to backtrack or do damage control because someone could have spilled too much. And then the other one, just give the children assurance and a feeling that they're safe too. I think they were saying because children are so young, they're very self-centered. Yeah. So if something bad happens to someone else, they think well, it's going to happen to me. Yeah. So you just want to reassure them this is sad, and, give them the space to feel their feelings and just kind of navigate the conversation, which I thought were helpful tips.
Now, I know just from previous episodes, you said that you actually experienced a lot of death or funerals and going to that when you were young, where I feel I think just my grandma, and I feel I don't fully remember. Do you remember getting the news broken to you?
I do.
Yeah.
And I think my parents did a really good job. Mm-hmm. I grew up with parents where be seen, not heard, and you're a kid, your opinion doesn't matter type of thing. But I think when it came to death, experiencing that in our family, they were very kind. They would sit me and Ben down and be this person is no longer with us. And if we had asked questions, they were able to answer them and keep a level head. And I think at that time, because a lot of it was kind of great aunts, so I felt oh, my aunt is losing her mother. So I would ask well, how's Aunt Pat doing? Well, she lost her mom, so obviously she's sad, but we can pray for her, or we'll send her a card, or different things like that. So I think they broke down what had took place with the family member well, and then also I think they just gave us space to give our emotions and talk about it, which was rare. So
did you have do you remember having not impractical questions, but did you have questions where did they go, kind of, or because you're saying that you more felt for your aunt who's losing her mom, but were you do you remember feeling curious about what's heaven, where did they go, why, or why did she die, the more bigger kind of curiosities?
Yeah, I guess not in the moment, because we were raised in church, so it was always embedded in us, prayers and there's a heaven, there's a hell, there's this whatever. Yeah. So I already had the structure of what I thought, what I was thinking the afterlife was oh, she is with God, that means she is at peace and everything is okay type of thing. I think maybe I would have the questions of how did it happen? Oh, okay. Because I guess at that age I wasn't comprehending that your heart could attack you, or things could rupture. So that to me was oh my God, could that, I kind of related with that tip where it was telling kids that, give them the reassurance that they're safe, because I was thinking if it happened to her, does it happen to me? And I was no, because they're old, or something like that. So I think that's where my questions came from, and not as much as like the afterlife and if they'll be watching over us. Like that was already in me.
Yeah, no, because with my niece now, as she's like, as I said, she's getting older, but like there's so many pictures of my dad, and she knows that's her pop. But we'll get like, I know they're cute in a way, but we'll like go on an airplane and we're like, yeah, we're gonna fly in this guy. She's like, so we're gonna see Pop.
Oh.
And we're like, he lives up there.
Yeah, like, but like trying to comprehend it.
Yes.
Okay.
Or there was the other day she was asking me, she was just like, who's your dad? I'm like, Pop to my dad. And she's like, oh, like he lives in heaven. I was like, yes. And then she's like, with God. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, who's God? And I was like,
I always say like, go ask someone else.
It was like 12 o'clock at night. I'm like, I think he made everything that we see. Where I feel like, I guess there's such an innocence and such an unknowing to it that I feel like I'm not completely sure how to navigate it. Yeah. It's like, you don't want to completely make something up and like.
That's true. I feel like that's also new with this generation because I felt like me as a child, I wasn't that curious. I just took whatever adults said for like face value. Like I didn't need to question it. Mm-hmm. But now I feel like kids challenge us more and have more questions where you're like, dang, y'all know too much. Because, I mean, they grew up with phones and stuff. They're, like, in kindergarten with phones. So.
I know. No, it's definitely crazy. I also feel like I look back now where, like, my grandfather, who I lost, I think, around, like, maybe I was 14, 15. I don't know if it's necessarily, like, kid. I mean, it feels like a kid looking back on it. But I just remember I was like, okay, like, my grandpa got old, and, like, this is what happened. And I was fine. Not fine, but, like, sad. And I felt like you recover because it's like your grandparent.
Exactly.
But I feel like once I lost my dad, I'm like, wow, so is this what my dad was feeling when like I lost my, and I feel like some of that has come back where it's just like, oh, so it's like this is what my mom was feeling when she lost her. And like, it's just wild to think about us just like going through our lives so normally when your parents had to be so strong and not realizing like the strength that your parents had to hold and be parents at the same time.
Exactly.
I feel like it gave me like a newfound like appreciation for them too, because I'm just like, wow, like I am breaking down as a 30-something-year-old where like you had 4 kids, and I think that has also been like a wild thing to think about.
Yeah, that was a lot on their plate at the time. And then parents, I'm still doing it today, obviously breaking news to children, because and your grief is sometimes makes you immobile.
Yeah.
And you don't know how it's going to show up. But the fact that you are a parent and that you have to explain this to children.
Yeah.
And then also it's like this trope of like, you got to be strong.
Yeah.
Type of thing, which is true. Like they have to put on a face in front of you. In the meantime, they're like planning funerals and arranging things for their own parents. So you're right.
Which makes us excited for our next episode too, our guest episode.
Yeah.
Who'll give us a little more in depth on that.
Exactly.
And then going back to the Instagram where I found it's an Instagram dedicated to kids in grief and kids like explaining grief. I came across this cute little book.
Okay. What is it
called? The ABCs of Grief.
Oh, wow.
And it is by Jessica Correntini. I hope I'm saying it right. I'm probably not.
Okay.
And illustrated by Rachel Neiman. But it's the ABCs of Grief. And literally, I think you should get it once you get a death certificate, because it explains grief so cute and so like to the point and beautifully.
Okay. For like what age do you think this, does it say, or?
I don't think it says.
Oh, okay. But for young kids.
I feel like if I like read it to Elena, who's almost 4, I feel like she would understand most of the words that was going on. And I feel like the way that they explain it, it's super simple and super easy. But one of my favorites for like me as an adult was H is for hopes.
Okay.
And it's my hopes and dreams for the future feel so different now. Where I feel like no one told me how different my future would feel, like losing my dad. And I think just hearing that explained so simply with this like cute little picture of just like
let me see.
The hopes in the door and like things looking different, but like not hearing that it's gonna feel bad that you don't have it, I thought was like really beautiful. And then Z is for zigzag, which I felt like it was one of the cutest ones. I guess, and the cutest is okay term to use. But just for little kids, where it's like, my grief is all year round. It moves with me wherever I go, here, there, and everywhere. Which, again, I just feel like the sentences that she used were just so beautifully written for kids to, like, explain and kind of understand.
Yeah.
Like, some days you will be sad, some days you will be happy, where I feel like I haven't met someone who has, like, that in-between age of a kid who, like, is realizing that this person's no longer in their life and had to, like, go through it. And I feel like it gave me comfort reading it as an adult.
That's good.
Yeah, because I feel like it was just nice to like have things so simply laid out. And I feel like it's a lot of points that we've hit so far in like our grief journey and our grief podcast. I was like, wow, like they really figured out how to like simplify this for kids. And what's also amazing about it is like they give activities that like grief activities that you can do with like your younger ones to kind of like build a bigger picture for them. Also, the account, I think it is just like Grieving Kids or Grief for Kids.
Okay.
We'll put the correct at in there. But there are like a couple more books that I believe that she has, and just like like explanations of how to tell your kids, and then activities you can do with your kids to kind of like broaden their views on grief, which I just thought was like so beautiful.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear that like you as an adult reading this without in the company of a child, because I'm assuming a parent would be reading this to their child to help them understand it, and that our grief journeys, no matter your age, are sort of aligned. That they are feeling the same way that we are, and probably just don't have the words to express it. It's a little bit abstract, and obviously like that could be for when someone like actually dies, or just ambiguous grief of different things.
No, there was some there. I forgot which letter it was, but there was where it's just like anything can. I think maybe it was E for everything. Okay. Where it's like everything can feel like loss. Or I think there might have been like F for friends, where it's just like friends will like. It went into ambiguous grief. Like it really touched on so many losses. Like this can be a loss too, or this day can feel weird too. And it was just simplified so nicely that I'm like, I needed this when this first happened, so I knew that it was okay when I had. B for burst, when I had this burst of grief come out. So that was in there too. Okay. Yeah, no, and also the illustrations are beautiful. It really is a nice like foundation book. I feel like if you're needing a starting point for explaining grief.
Okay. No, that's beautiful. I'm glad she had that. And also like preparing for this, I was thinking, in my mind, I was thinking of younger children too, like you were saying around Elena's age, but also thinking about like older kids, like teenagers. So I found this specialist, Dr. Alan Wolfelt, and he was specifically talking about like teen years with grief and experience in death. So he wrote like teen years are naturally difficult, which we all know, we've been there. You're no longer a child, but you're not yet an adult. And you should not be told to be strong and to be supportive of the surviving members, and that it like really hurts them in mourning. So also too, when you were reading that, and I was thinking about ambiguous grief, I know kids really went through that during COVID because school became virtual. So explaining that there's a virus that is deadly, and then they can't really see their friends or be in classrooms, made me think of this book too. And then also teens that like miss their proms or graduations. And then now like fast forward, some of them had went to college, and then even graduations now with like protests and things that were going on. So it's like 1,000%. They've experienced a lot of grief throughout their school year, these kids. And not just outside of death. So that's why I'm thinking I'm loving these resources that they have books to explain it from like preschool age all the way up into teenage years, and giving them the space to be kids and to figure things out and know that it's weird, but to be able to have adults and other supportive groups to help them. Yeah. Because even looking that up, I didn't realize how many resources are out here. Yeah. For grief specifically directed towards kids, and then we know like suicide rates unfortunately have been up amongst children. So it's good to know that they have outlets and things that people can seek if these things are going on.
No, there's always a place to go look.
Yeah. But yes. But in the future, if you have children, how do you think you would handle these situations?
I honestly...
Or have you thought about it at all?
I definitely have not thought about it, because I am someone... Well, one, I did lose my dad, and I feel like sometimes kids just seem like such a far in the future kind of thing.
This is like... What is it like? It's not real. Just
it doesn't. I think,
or it doesn't have to be real.
Or like, not even that. My niece is so attached to like my mom. Like her grandma is her only friend. There are times where I can't even play with her because she's playing with her grandma. Yeah. So I can't even imagine.
Hypothetical.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry. You didn't have to.
I was like, no, my mom's real. She's not hypothetical.
That's why I was like, why is she saying her mom's real? I meant a hypothetical scenario if you had a kid.
No, I think, because I can't imagine what my brother will have to go through, like explaining that, because Elena now officially knows like my grandma's here, where she like didn't know my dad, or like can't remember it, but so like young. I mean, I honestly, I'm not sure, because I feel like you don't know how it's gonna happen. You don't know if, not that at the right time, but you don't know if it'll be like an old age thing, if it'll be a freak thing. Yeah. I feel like just having a sick parent and going along, I think I've realized that like being calm, and how you said like just having the right disposition when you are telling your kids makes a world of a difference. Like I remember when I the guidance counselor was getting me when the Twin Towers and all of that happened. Like, she was like, there's no problem with your family. There's just a problem with the world. And I feel like getting something that alarming, it was like, it made me so scared and so worried, where I feel like my parents, even like when they were telling me my dad needed this surgery or he was going through this, always had such a calm demeanor that it kept me calm. And it kept me hopeful. So I think just making sure, like, I put myself in the setting first, that I'll be, like, calm for them.
Well, that's smart.
What about
like
you?
that. I think my parents did a good job, so I might take a page out of their parenting book. And then also a podcast I listened to, Monster. It was the DC Sniper season.
Oh, okay.
And it's the second episode. There is a beautiful story that makes me cry every time I listen to it. But there is a guy whose wife was killed by the sniper. And at the time, his daughter was 3 years old. And he was like, I had to pick her up from preschool after leaving the scene. And he basically told her, like, mommy's no longer going to be physically with us, but she'll be watching over us for the rest of our lives, and like she's with God. And he was saying as he got to raise his daughter and different holidays and stuff would come up, because she was so young, she would say like, well, I want to die. Like, I want to die. I want to be with mommy. And he would be like, no, everyone has their time. So it's not your time yet, but she's still here. So I thought that was just beautiful to let his daughter know that she's still present in his life. Like, she's still present in your life. And she is with you, but just in a new form.
Yeah.
To kind of break it down to a 3-year-old, I couldn't imagine, especially the day that it happened.
No, and I think that's my biggest fear, too, is that if it was something so, like,
tragic,
abrupt and tragic, where that you have no kind of, like, I think, again, like, I don't know what that man did on the car ride to the preschool, but I hope I can, like, channel that, too, to, like, bring it to that kind of point where you deliver it in a gentle way.
Yeah, the best way you know how.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know we spoke about it, like, on the episode about specifically with kids with, like, school shootings, which brings us to our dedication today. Today's episode is dedicated to the victims of Sandy Hook.
And a big congratulations to those from Sandy Hook who just graduated this year.
We're your Bereavement Babes, Leah and Rachel. Thanks for grieving with us.